A young black janitor walks into the courtroom and declares she wants to defend the accused, making every eye in the room turn toward her. Laughter erupts right after the judges hesitate and the lawyers mock her. What no one knows is that she has memorized every page of the case and is about to tear their entire scheme apart. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. I will speak for him. Every gaze in the bustling municipal courtroom swiveled, startled, all eyes fixated on the voice, young, clear, and utterly out of place. Anya Diaz, an 18-year-old black woman, stood near the back, her work apron still tied around her slight frame. A sheen of perspiration gleamed on her forehead, and she clutched a well-worn binder to her chest. A ripple of muffled laughter spread, punctuated by scoffing murmurs. Cell phones were quickly raised to record the spectacle. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Probably the cleaning staff." Another added, "What's next? The janitor taking the witness stand." The gallery's amusement surged, but Anya Diaz didn't flinch. At 18, she had endured her share of dismissive glances, but never had the sting been quite so sharp as in this moment, standing before Brooklyn's legal elite in a hall designed to keep young women like her on the outside. The judge blinked, clearly taken aback. "Excuse me, miss." "Anya Diaz, Your Honor," she responded, her voice steady. "I wish to stand as temporary counsel for Mr. Leonard Vance." The name alone ignited fresh murmurs. Leonard Vance, the charismatic calculating tech mogul, now under federal investigation for intricate contract fraud and financial deception totaling over $28 million. His high-profile legal team had just vanished, quite literally. His lead attorney, after months of meticulous pre-trial preparation, had failed to appear on the first day of the hearing. Rumors whispered he'd fled the country. Leonard, seated beside the empty defense chair, turned and fixed Anya with an incredulous, sneering scowl. "You," he barked. "You should be home dusting shelves, not playing dress-up in a courtroom." More laughter erupted, louder this time. Someone closer to the aisle muttered, "Bold of her to show up with a feather duster and legal dreams." But Anya held her ground. She took a deep, fortifying breath and stepped forward. "I have studied every single page of this case, every partnership agreement, every financial record, every filed testimony," she asserted. "I know this case better than anyone in this room." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Diaz, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, sir. I attended New York University for a year, but I had to withdraw after my freshman year due to overwhelming financial hardship. Since then, I've worked as household staff to pay off my family's debts, but I never stopped studying. I've followed federal corporate cases. I've spent the last 3 years poring over complex economic litigation rulings. This case in particular, I've committed to memory backward and forward." The courtroom fell into a hush. Even the prosecutor, Evelyn Reed, a tall, impeccably dressed woman in a pristine charcoal suit, tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes despite herself. "Objection," Evelyn stated. "This is highly irregular and frankly borderline insulting to the sanctity of our justice system." The judge held up a hand. "Noted. However, as Mr. Vance's counsel has failed to appear, and if he agrees to allow Miss Diaz to speak on his behalf for this preliminary session, I will permit it, under strict supervision." Leonard looked as if he'd just swallowed something foul. "You want me to let a kid represent me in federal court?" he muttered under his breath. Anya leaned in close. "I may not have a license, Mr. Vance, but I know precisely how they're setting you up. And right now, I'm the only person in this room not trying to bury you." He stared at her, breathing heavily, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Then, with a frustrated grunt, he waved a dismissive hand. "Fine, do your worst." Anya nodded, her composure unwavering, and walked toward the defense table, each step deliberate. She laid her worn binder on the polished wood, opening it carefully. Inside were pages of meticulous handwritten notes, cross-referenced citations from actual rulings, color-coded tabs, and crisp printouts of the very same partnership agreements Evelyn Reed was planning to use to dismantle him. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, a smirk playing at her lips. "I hope you brought more than highlighters and grocery lists, counsel." Anya glanced up, her gaze steady. "I brought logic and the truth." Gasps echoed through the gallery. The judge cleared his throat. "Proceed, Miss Diaz." She stood holding a page before her. "On the 15th of June of last year, Mr. Vance's company was approached to revise its joint venture agreement with Horizon Labs. That revision, which Miss Reed claims Mr. Vance fabricated, was signed electronically from an IP address based in Geneva. However, she held up a highlighted paragraph. The original terms were still valid under the original SEC filing dated 3 weeks prior, which means if anyone committed forgery, it was the plaintiff. Evelyn's smirk vanished entirely. Anya continued her voice unwavering, projecting clearly across the hushed room. The gallery, which had moments ago sneered, now leaned forward, captivated. Her words possessed the resonance of something rarer than mere expertise conviction. Her fingers didn't tremble not once. She had spent the past 3 years secretly devouring economic litigation during her late-night breaks reading transcripts until her eyes burned, taking notes during podcasts from legal analysts, even mailing herself documents to meticulously build a record in case she ever had the chance to speak. Today, that chance had arrived. The judge tapped his pen. This is compelling. We'll recess until tomorrow to examine this evidence and determine if further action is warranted. Miss Diaz, you may return, then pending review. Anya bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Honor. As she stepped back, her heart thudding a frantic rhythm, she could feel their eyes on her, disbelieving shaken. Leonard Vance remained seated, lips tight silent. But for the first time that day, he didn't look quite so alone. That night, Anya sat at the small, rickety kitchen table in her tiny basement apartment in the Bronx, the very table where she had once helped her little sister with algebra homework while stirring a pot of rice and beans. Now the table was covered in legal documents, sticky notes, a half-eaten cup of instant noodles, and her open laptop, playing an old lecture from a trial law professor she used to admire. Her apron still hung on the back of the chair, stained from the morning rush at the Vance estate. The courtroom's echoes still reverberated in her ears. She could see the faces, confused, amused, disbelieving, and Leonard Vance's face, one she still couldn't quite read. She sipped cold coffee and leaned over the contracts again. There was something about the way the revised joint venture clause had been phrased. It used legal terminology that didn't match Leonard's previous contracts. It felt almost foreign. She jotted a note, compare phrasing W Horizon versus old partners. A buzz on her phone made her jump. Unknown number. You were something else today, said a low, amused voice. Didn't expect the girl in the apron to turn the room upside down. Anya froze. Who is this? Let's just say someone in that courtroom has more at stake than you know. You're poking a very large animal, Anya. Be careful where you stick the stick. The call ended. Her hand shook for a moment before she forced herself to breathe. Fear wasn't new. She'd grown up with it walking home alone from school, through alleys. She had no choice but to cross, watching her mother work 3 jobs and still get eviction notices. But this fear was different. It was cold, calculated. The next morning, she returned to the Vance estate early. Leonard wasn't expecting her. I didn't ask for a meeting, he said when she appeared in his office, still wearing her usual gray cardigan and jeans. You also didn't ask for someone to save your name from being dragged through federal mud, she retorted, calm but firm. He stared at her, his expression unreadable. You think yesterday changed anything? I think it cracked a door. We need to open it wider. Leonard looked away, tapping a pen against his desk. You came prepared. I always am. You just never noticed. There was a pause. Anya stepped closer. Mr. Vance, someone is setting you up. That contract revision, it was too clean, and you signed it remotely. I was in Denver that week. Tech conference. I signed documents on the go. Standard practice. Do you remember opening that exact file? He hesitated. Not really. My assistant Marcus usually preps the documents. I just glance and click. Anya's brow furrowed. Where is Marcus now? He left last month. Said he needed a break from the pressure. Or maybe he needed distance. Leonard crossed his arms. You're implying Marcus forged my signature. I'm saying someone used your trust to manipulate these documents. And I think it started with Marcus. Later that afternoon, Anya took a subway to downtown Brooklyn and found the old building where Marcus had once shared a co-working space. She walked the halls, slowly scanning the nameplates. One still read, Marcus Thorne Contract Consultant. She knocked no answer, but the door was ajar. Inside papers were scattered drawers, open a laptop missing from its charger. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and urgency. Something had spooked him. Anya backed out, her heart racing. She took a photo of the office for reference, then turned to leave, but not before noticing a folder left on the floor near the desk. Inside, there were 3 copies of a contract draft identical to the ones in the court case, but 2 had different metadata footers. One listed Geneva, the other Brooklyn. She clutched it tight, swallowing hard. The next morning in court, Anya waited quietly at the defense table, her notes ready. Leonard hadn't said much to her since their meeting, but he had given her a small nod on the way in. Evelyn Reed strutted in her heels, clicking like gunshots on marble. "Good morning," she said sweetly, but her eyes were cold. "Ready for round 2, counsel." Anya stood. "More than you know." They argued over the contract's origin. Anya presented the differing metadata. Evelyn objected, but the judge permitted the review. Then Anya pulled out the altered clause comparison. "Your Honor, the clause that supposedly implicates my client is worded in a legal dialect typical of offshore entities, not American contract language. My client's previous contracts follow U.S. standards. The phrasing shift indicates a ghost draft originating offshore. It is highly probable this was inserted by someone else." The courtroom was silent again. Leonard leaned slightly forward, his mouth barely open. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I request a delay," she said too quickly. "We need to verify the source of this evidence." "We already did," Anya interrupted, holding up a printed chain of custody report from a verified digital forensics firm. "This copy came from the hard drive of Marcus Thorne, who, by the way, hasn't been seen since yesterday morning." The judge nodded slowly. "This is no longer a simple fraud case. We may be looking at evidence tampering and conspiracy." As recess was called, Anya stepped outside into the cold wind, her lungs finally taking in air. She leaned on the railing and stared at the city below. Leonard joined her moments later. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," she replied, her eyes still forward. "Just don't ever underestimate the girl in the apron again." Anya returned to the Vance estate late that evening, exhaustion weighing down her limbs. The courtroom buzz was still replaying in her mind, Evelyn Reed's startled expression, the murmur of the gallery, Leonard's stunned silence. It was the first time she felt like someone had heard her, not as a background presence, but as a voice that mattered. She kicked off her shoes in the side entrance and walked through the quiet kitchen. The staff had long gone. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock accompanied her as she reached for the teapot. She poured water into a mug dropped in a chamomile bag and leaned against the counter, closing her eyes. This kitchen was where it had started. 3 years ago, she'd stood in this very spot on her first day as a housekeeper, 15 broke with dreams deferred. She'd hidden her textbooks under the sink. At night, while others slept, she read court briefs by flashlight and scoured legal databases on a hand-me-down laptop. This place had become her secret classroom. She took a sip, then paused. There was something under her foot. She bent down and found a small torn envelope. It had no name, just the embossed logo of Horizon Labs. Her pulse quickened. She took the envelope to her tiny basement quarters and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet, wrinkled and stained, an internal Horizon memo dated 5 months before the lawsuit. It discussed potential strategic realignment with Leonard Vance's company and referenced a legal pathway to renegotiation should Mr. Vance resist favorable terms. A chill crawled up her spine. Strategic legal pressure even before the contract revisions. Anya stared at the paper. This wasn't just fraud, it was premeditated manipulation. She placed the memo in a plastic sleeve and tucked it into her growing case binder. Then she pulled out her notebook and scribbled names, Horizon board members, legal reps, known associates. She underlined one Silas Croft, former partner at a private equity firm and now general counsel at Horizon. His name had appeared in several emails she'd seen during court document reviews. The next morning, she called an old classmate from NYU, Ben Carter, now working at a small but scrappy investigative paper in Queens. "Ben, I need a favor. Quiet, fast, and strictly off record." He hesitated. "You asking for a background check?" "I'm asking for a map of a fire before it spreads. I think someone's been setting this up long before the lawsuit." She met Ben that night at a diner near his office. Over lukewarm coffee and a shared plate of fries, he slid a folder across the table. "Croft has ties with an offshore firm that specialized in contractual leverage. Legal speak for they draft fake pressure points to force renegotiation. Been involved in 2 whistleblower cases, both sealed." Anya's eyes widened. "So they manufacture legal tension." "That's the idea. And guess what? One of the whistleblowers was found dead 7 months after the settlement, ruled an accident. No autopsy." Anya closed her eyes. God, you sure you want to keep going with this? She nodded. I don't have the luxury of backing out, not when they're playing with people's lives. The next morning in court, Anya kept her expression neutral as Evelyn Reed strutted in, armed with a fresh binder and a smug smile. Your Honor, Evelyn began, we would like to request dismissal of yesterday's presented metadata evidence due to questionable chain of custody. Anya stood slowly. Objection. The court accepted the forensics review as authentic, and we have further documentation tying the origin of the altered documents directly to an employee of the plaintiff. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Miss Diaz is not a licensed attorney, Your Honor. Her continued presence has uncovered more truth in 2 days than your entire firm in 2 months. The judge interrupted. Objection. Overruled. Whispers buzzed around the room. Leonard looked over at Anya. He didn't speak, but he gave the smallest nod. After the session, Anya returned to the Vance estate to retrieve the remaining house files. She passed the entry hall where portraits of the Vance family hung in perfect symmetry. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs and entered the office Marcus had used before resigning. It smelled of dust and leather. She began pulling open drawers, cataloging the contents. Staplers, post-it pads, phone chargers, and then at the back of the lowest drawer, something heavier, a black planner. She opened it carefully. Inside were handwritten notes, mostly mundane reminders, grocery lists, client call times. But wedged between pages for the week of June 8th was a sticky note with 2 words scribbled in red ink, Geneva file, and beneath it a 4-digit code, 7,349. Anya stared at it, her heart pounding. That was the same week the contract had been signed remotely from Geneva. Could this be a safe deposit box, a courier file? She wasn't sure yet, but it was a clue, a real one. She was still staring when Leonard entered the office behind her. I should have paid more attention, he said quietly. Anya didn't turn. You trusted people who wanted your name more than your partnership. He stepped beside her, looking at the planner. And you, what do you want? She finally looked at him. Justice, even if no one writes about it in the papers. Leonard nodded slowly. You're wasting your brilliance cleaning marble floors. No, Anya replied. I've been preparing. She placed the planner into her binder and closed it carefully. Tomorrow, she said, we dig deeper. 2 hours after sunrise, Anya stood across the street from a dull gray building in Jersey City, her coat drawn tight against the early spring wind. The address matched the one she had tracked down after cross-referencing the 4-digit code from Marcus's black planner with local courier lockers. The Geneva file note had kept her up all night, flipping through theories, dates, and shipping manifests until the code finally led her there, a private storage service used often by corporate clients for sensitive materials. She stepped inside her boots, echoing softly on the concrete floor. The woman at the front desk barely looked up as Anya approached. Locker access, the woman asked, chewing gum. Anya nodded and slid over the code on a sticky note, 7,349. I'm here to collect on behalf of a former employee. The receptionist looked at the note, then back at Anya, suspicious. You got ID? I do. Anya handed over her state ID and held her breath. The photo was from years ago, before her university dropout, before the long days of scrubbing baseboards and nights filled with case law. The woman stared a second longer, then clicked her screen and grunted. Yeah, it's still active. Someone dropped the packet off 7 weeks ago, said he'd come back for it. Never did. She handed Anya a small metal key. Lockers down the second row, numbers on the left. Anya did. Thanks. She walked briskly, her heart thudding harder with each step. The locker opened with a dry click. Inside was a slim, sealed manila envelope. No label, no name, just a red wax seal with the letter C pressed into the center. Crofts. She slipped it into her coat and left nerves crawling across her skin. Back in her apartment, she sat at her table and opened the envelope carefully, holding her breath like it might explode. Inside was a USB drive and a printed memo. The memo was addressed to internal counsel only and stamped confidential. Anya scanned the text, her stomach flipping. It was from Silas Croft, to the Horizon Labs Executive Board. The memo outlined legal architecture recommendations for achieving a hostile contract acquisition, including sample edits to clauses, guidelines for establishing remote signature trails through VPN rerouting, and language suggesting, if resistance occurs, push legal action under pretext of misrepresentation. Her hands trembled. The USB held files, spreadsheets, several labeled with dates, and Vance Enterprises project codes. She opened one marked Forecast Projections Horizon Negotiation Round 3. It included a line item, projected value from litigation leverage $22.7 million. They had budgeted for the lawsuit. Anya stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't just about Leonard Vance anymore. It was about power, the abuse of it, weaponizing legality to steal equity and silence resistance. And it was happening in boardrooms just like this, likely every day. She printed the memo and highlighted the core sections. Then she grabbed her coat and headed to the Vance estate. Leonard needed to see this now. He was on a call when she arrived. She handed him the memo wordlessly. He glanced at the heading and froze. "Where did you get this?" "Marcus left it in a storage locker. The USB has more. They had this planned months before you even hesitated to sign anything." Leonard rubbed his face, the blood draining from his cheeks. "They were going to steal the company with or without me agreeing." Anya nodded. "And frame you in the process so you couldn't fight back." He leaned back slowly. "We need to bring this to the court." "We will," she said. "But first, we need to seal the trail. If we submit this without verifying the chain of custody, Evelyn will rip it to shreds." Leonard exhaled. "I'll call my IT lead. He's worked on secure financial forensics before." "No," Anya said firmly. "We don't tell anyone else yet. Not until we know who's clean." Later that evening, Anya took the files to Ben at the diner. He examined the memo and USB files carefully. "Whoever wrote this," he muttered, "has the moral compass of a snake. Can you help trace the IP logs, confirm it's Croft's network?" Ben nodded. "Give me 2 days. Maybe less if my guy at the tech desk owes me a favor." As they talked, Anya noticed an older man across the diner watching her. His eyes were sharp, and he didn't even pretend to hide his interest. She stiffened slightly. Ben noticed. "Friend of yours?" "No," Anya murmured, "but I've seen him before at the courthouse 2 days ago." "Think you've been made?" "Maybe." That night back home, Anya reinforced the deadbolt on her door and downloaded the files onto 2 additional encrypted drives. One she stashed in a hollow book, the other in her freezer wrapped in foil and hidden behind a bag of frozen peas, a precaution she'd picked up from an old documentary on whistleblowers. Then she sat down and began drafting a timeline. Every event, every signature, every meeting that had led to this moment. She outlined how the contract terms evolved when Marcus had submitted travel expenses from Switzerland and when Silas Croft had suddenly requested full control of Horizon's negotiation terms. By 2:00 a.m., her table was covered in highlighters and notes like a map of someone else's conspiracy. Only it was all real and dangerously close to being buried. The next day in court, Anya walked in with steady steps. She greeted Leonard with a nod, avoided Evelyn's stare, and took her seat at the defense table. The judge began. "We will now hear any additional pre-trial disclosures." "Your Honor," Evelyn interjected, "I'd like to request the court reject any further speculative claims from the defense, particularly from someone still without a license to practice law." Before the judge could speak, Anya rose. "I would like to submit a confidential memo authored by Silas Croft, General Counsel for the plaintiff, outlining premeditated legal tactics, including forged documents and hostile acquisition strategies." Gasps filled the room. Evelyn stepped forward. "This is absurd." Anya handed the document to the bailiff. "The memo is time-stamped, includes metadata logs, and was discovered in a secure storage location rented by Marcus Thorne, the former assistant to Mr. Vance." The judge read in silence for a long moment, then looked up. "This, if authentic, changes everything." Leonard looked at Anya, eyes wide with something new, not just surprise, but respect. Anya stood outside the courthouse after the hearing, the wind tugging at the edges of her coat. Her face was calm, but inside, her pulse still pounded. The courtroom had erupted with murmurs, disbelief, and sharp whispers when the judge acknowledged the implications of the Horizon memo. She had expected resistance. She hadn't expected silence. Leonard exited behind her, his tie, slightly loosened eyes narrowed in a deep, calculating squint. He hadn't spoken much during the session, but now he stood beside her, his voice low. You just tore the mask off a multi-billion-dollar operation. I didn't do it for you, Anya said, not looking at him. I did it because they thought no one would ever challenge them. Leonard's expression didn't shift, but something in his stance softened. You just saved my name from being destroyed. You deserve more than gratitude. She turned to him. I want access to everything. Full transparency. Every internal file related to the Horizon partnership, emails, memos, contracts. No more surprises, he nodded. You'll have it by morning. That night, she returned home and found a white envelope slid under her apartment door. No name, just a plain sheet inside. You've made enemies. Be careful what hill you choose to die on. No signature. She stared at the note for a long time before setting it on fire in her kitchen sink. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she printed backup copies of every file, loaded encrypted duplicates onto flash drives, and dropped one off with Ben downtown just in case. By morning, a large manila envelope was waiting on her porch. True to his word, Leonard had delivered internal communications from the last 18 months, including emails from Marcus Thorne board minutes and correspondence with Horizon executives. As she flipped through them, patterns emerged. One exchange stood out, a series of late-night emails between Marcus and Silas Croft, thinly veiled as consultation messages, but the timestamps matched nights Leonard had been traveling and unable to review files. Anya read them 3 times, her brow furrowed. Subject lines like Horizon Pressure Plan, forwarding initial edits, and most damning, need this signed before Vance returns. They had counted on Leonard being distracted, busy, arrogant, inattentive. But the moment that plan unraveled, they'd turned on him, confident he wouldn't survive the scandal, and Marcus had vanished the moment cracks appeared. Anya knew what she had to do next. That afternoon, she returned to Marcus Thorne's old apartment in the East Village. It had been listed for sublet on a local board, but she'd convinced the landlord to let her collect a forgotten item by pretending to be Marcus's assistant. The place was empty, stripped bare, except for a pile of discarded folders on the kitchen counter. She sifted through them quickly and froze at a neatly printed receipt for a wire transfer to a Swiss bank dated 1 week before the lawsuit was filed. Recipient C. Investments Zurich. Her fingers traced the number. She snapped a photo, folded the original, and pocketed it. Back outside, a sleek black car rolled up beside her. The back window slid down. Inside was a man she didn't recognize, early 40s, tailored suit, pale blue eyes that didn't blink much. Miss Diaz. She stepped back instinctively. Who's asking? I'm a representative. Our firm believes this has gone far enough. You're a smart woman. You know how this works. You threatening me? Not at all. I'm giving you options. Stop now and no one gets hurt. Walk away. You've made your point. Anya stared at him, her heart hammering. Tell your people that the only way I'm walking away is through the front doors of that courtroom, with the truth in my hands. He didn't flinch. Truth, he said softly, can be expensive. Good thing I'm already broke. The window slid shut. The car pulled away. She stood there for a long moment, the city moving around her as if she weren't part of it. Then she turned and walked to the subway, her mind racing. That evening, she met with Leonard in his office. He looked older than usual, the weight of the scandal wearing at his confidence. I don't know who I can trust anymore, he admitted, rubbing his temples. Then trust evidence, she said, laying out the receipt and emails. His eyes scanned the documents. I gave Marcus everything. Let him sit in every board meeting. I thought he was loyal. Loyalty built on silence isn't loyalty, it's leverage. He looked up at her. You think we can win this? She nodded. If we stay 3 steps ahead, if we stay loud, and if we make it impossible for them to erase what we found. Leonard leaned back. Considering you've done more for me in a week than a dozen high-priced lawyers did in a year. I'm not doing this for you, she repeated. I'm doing this for people like me who never get a seat at the table unless they drag their own chair through the door. He smiled faintly. Then let's make sure no one ever takes that chair away. That night, as she sat back in her apartment with her notes, Anya thought of her mother, the woman who raised her on stories of resilience and chess games on a milk crate table in their small living room. Her mother had worked too hard to see her graduate, too hard to see her fight like this. But Anya could almost hear her voice in the silence. Don't let them forget your name, sweetie. Make them remember who stood up when no one else did. She opened her laptop, stared into the glow of the screen, and whispered to the darkness. I'm not backing down. Rain drizzled down the courthouse steps as Anya climbed them one by one the next morning. Her coat was soaked through hair curling slightly at the edges, but her grip on the evidence folder never loosened. She had gone over it 10 times the night before every memo transfer receipt, email, and timestamp. Today wasn't just another hearing. Today they were submitting the documents that might finally shatter the Horizon facade. Inside the courtroom, the energy was different, more eyes on her now. Less mockery, more uncertainty. Some still saw her as an anomaly, others as a threat, but for the first time they didn't dismiss her. Evelyn Reed walked in moments later, face tight, flanked by 2 men in dark suits, not colleagues, but lawyers of her own insurance. When the judge entered the room, fell into silence. "We will begin with new evidence submitted by the defense," the judge said. "Miss Diaz," Anya stood. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit C, a series of internal emails between Mr. Marcus Thorne and Mr. Silas Croft, as well as financial records showing a transfer to an offshore account tied to an entity owned by Mr. Croft. These documents support our claim that the lawsuit brought by Horizon Labs was not only unfounded, but manufactured with intent to defraud and forcibly acquire Mr. Vance's company." She handed the documents to the bailiff. Every step felt slow, deliberate, as if time had thickened in the room. The judge read in silence. Evelyn remained still, but her jaw was visibly clenched. Then came the moment Anya had anticipated. "Miss Reed," the judge asked, "do you have a response to these new allegations?" Evelyn rose. "Your Honor, we question the authenticity of these documents. There's no proof they weren't fabricated after the fact. Furthermore, these alleged financial transactions could have been forged." "We anticipated that claim," Anya interrupted, stepping forward, "which is why we had them independently verified by a digital forensics team with signatures cross-matched against prior filings and transfer data confirmed through the Swiss intermediary's own audit logs. Their sworn affidavit is included in the packet." The judge took a deep breath. "Very well. I will review this thoroughly. For now, both parties are instructed to remain available for continued examination." Recess was called, but no one stood. There was a sense of reckoning in the air. Leonard leaned over to Anya, whispering, "You didn't just shake their foundation, you cracked it wide open." "I'm not here to shake things," she said quietly. "I'm here to make sure no one builds lies on broken ground again." Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Anya kept her head down, pushing past the flashing lights and rapid-fire questions. A voice called out from the crowd, "Miss Diaz, is it true you were a housekeeper before taking this case?" She paused, turned back. "Yes, I was. And I still clean the same kitchen 3 nights a week." A few reporters chuckled, unsure whether she was joking. Anya leaned forward slightly into the microphone. "Let me be clear, I didn't need a corner office or a $1,000 suit to see injustice. All I needed was my voice and the truth." The crowd fell silent. That evening, Anya sat at the diner with Ben again. He was scrolling through headlines on his phone. "You're trending." She raised an eyebrow. "For what?" He turned the screen to her. There it was, a photo of her standing in the rain binder, clutched to her chest, eyes sharp with focus. The headline read, "The helper who might take down a billion-dollar empire." She exhaled. "That's not what this is about." "No," Ben said. "But it's what they understand. A young black woman who wasn't supposed to speak, speaking loudly. A girl in an apron showing up where billionaires crumble. That's the story." She shook her head. "I don't want fame. I want justice." Ben leaned in. "Then stay ready. Because when you speak truth to power, power speaks back. And it doesn't always whisper." As if on cue, Anya's phone buzzed. A text. "Unknown number. He knows where you sleep." She swallowed. "They're not even pretending anymore." Ben's face hardened. "You need protection. Let me get someone to stay near your building. Quiet. No drama." "I'll be fine," she said, but her voice lacked its usual steel. That night, her sleep was shallow. Every creak of the pipes, every groan of the walls made her eyes fly open. She kept her binder on the nightstand, hand resting on it like a shield. By morning, she looked worn but ready. She returned to Leonard's estate for one last meeting before the next hearing. He looked up from his desk as she entered. "You're making enemies in high places." "I don't mind heights," she said. "I just want to know where the ladder ends." He slid over a new document. "I had my private counsel draft a motion to dismiss the lawsuit based on criminal tampering. With your evidence, it could work." Anya read it carefully, nodding. "Good. But we don't just dismiss, we countersue. Fraud, defamation, emotional distress. Let them feel what it's like to have the system turned on them." Leonard studied her. "You've changed." "No," she said. I've just stopped hiding." As she left his office, Leonard stared after her for a long moment. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like the most powerful person in the room, and he didn't mind it one bit. The courtroom was buzzing before the judge even entered. The press benches were filled, some reporters standing in the back whispering updates into their microphones. The entire city, it seemed, was watching, not just because of the billions at stake or the corporate reputation of Horizon Labs, but because of her Anya Diaz, the girl in the apron who had become a symbol of silent resistance breaking into the loudest rooms. She walked into the chamber with calm steps, wearing a simple navy dress, her binder clutched in one hand. Her face was tired but composed. She didn't make eye contact with the cameras. She didn't need to. She already had their attention. Leonard stood as she approached the defense table. "They're calling it the cleaning girl case. That's what CNN ran with last night." She didn't flinch. "Let them. That's what they understand. They don't know what it means to prepare case law in a laundry room with roaches on the wall. They don't know what it means to keep fighting when no one even knows you're in the ring." He gave her a quiet nod. "You're going to win this." "We are going to win it," she corrected, "but not by playing their game. We make our own rules now." The judge entered, and court was called to order. Today, he announced, "We will review the defense's motion to dismiss based on submitted evidence of fraud, tampering, and unethical corporate behavior. The court has reviewed the documents overnight. Miss Reed, the floor is yours." Evelyn stood her usual poise, dulled just slightly by fatigue. "Your Honor, we maintain that the defense's evidence is circumstantial and improperly sourced. We request exclusion under Rule 403. Anya stood before the judge could speak. "Your Honor, I have additional verification regarding the Swiss transfer. The receiving bank has confirmed that the account belongs to an entity with Mr. Silas Croft as a primary beneficiary. They've provided notarized confirmation, which I've included in our latest exhibit." The judge motioned for the documents. "Continue." "Furthermore," Anya added, stepping forward, "we have a new witness, a Horizon Labs Junior associate who has agreed to testify under federal protection." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "Who?" Anya remained still. "Her name is withheld for security reasons, but she has first-hand knowledge of internal conversations regarding the fabrication of contract clauses, manipulation of IP routing, and the effort to defame Mr. Vance." The judge leaned forward. "If this witness confirms the validity of the claims, and if her testimony is found credible, it would constitute grounds for full dismissal and open a new criminal investigation." Evelyn sank slightly in her chair. Court was recessed until the witness could be prepared for examination. Outside the courtroom, Anya met with the witness, a young woman named Iris, no older than 20, pale, nervous, clutching a messenger bag against her chest like armor. "You sure about this?" Anya asked softly. Iris nodded. "I was there when Silas told the team to alter the metadata. I heard him say that the goal wasn't winning. It was ruining. They wanted to destroy Mr. Vance's name so no one else would ever question their leverage again." Anya placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing something most people never would." "I'm just tired of being quiet," Iris said, her voice trembling. "I couldn't sleep anymore." Anya nodded. "Then let's give them something to remember." That evening, Anya walked the familiar streets back to her apartment. The Bronx felt heavier these days, like the concrete itself was watching. She passed the corner bodega, waved to Mr. Chen, the owner, who always gave her a free bottle of water when she worked double shifts. "You're on the news again," he said, smiling with cracked teeth. "You give them hell, Anya." She smiled faintly. "That's the plan." Back home, her apartment was darker than usual. She reached for the light switch and stopped. The lamp on her desk had been knocked over. Her notes were scattered. Someone had been inside. She stood frozen, listening. No sound. No movement. Then she backed out slowly, heart thudding, and called Ben from the hallway. "Someone broke in. They didn't take anything. They just wanted me to know." Ben cursed softly. "You need to stay somewhere else tonight. My cousin's got a place in Hoboken. Quiet building, mostly retirees. No one will look for you there." Anya hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, okay." That night, in a small one-bedroom filled with doilies and porcelain cat figurines, Anya sat on a borrowed couch and stared at her case files. She should have been afraid, but she was beyond fear now. She was focused. She called Leonard just before midnight. "I want to go public," she said. He paused. "You're already public." "No." she replied. I mean full transparency. Press conference, show the documents, make it impossible for them to bury it. You'll make yourself a target. I already am. Leonard exhaled. Okay, I'll arrange it, but once we step out into that spotlight, there's no coming back. Anya stared out the window at the quiet street. Then we stepped together. The next morning, standing behind a podium outside the courthouse, Anya faced a wall of microphones and reporters. Flashbulbs went off. Her voice was calm. I was not hired to fight this case. I wasn't trained to stand in a courtroom, but I have stood for the truth, and I will keep standing because power built on lies deserves to fall. Behind her, Leonard nodded, once his face unreadable, and somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "She's not just defending him, she's defending all of us." The day after the press conference, Anya woke up in the quiet apartment in Hoboken to a soft knock at the door. She opened it slowly, half expecting a reporter or worse. But it was Ben holding 2 coffees and a bag of croissants from the corner cafe. "Thought you could use some fuel," he said, stepping in with a cautious smile. Anya took one of the cups. "Thanks. I barely slept. I kept waiting for something to happen. A call, a knock, anything." "Well," Ben said, sitting down beside her, "sometimes the most dangerous moment isn't when they come after you. It's when they go quiet." Anya nodded. She understood. After the press conference, there'd been a wave of support. Messages poured in from people she didn't know. Single mothers, aspiring law students, janitors who said her story reminded them of their own fights. But the silence from Horizon, that was unsettling. No statement, no denial, no counterattack, just stillness. Leonard called mid-morning. "Croft hasn't shown up to his office in 2 days," he said without greeting. "Evelyn Reed filed a motion to withdraw from the case this morning. Claimed conflict of interest." Anya stood from the couch, stunned. "She's backing out." "Looks like it." And Iris was contacted by someone last night. Not a threat, not directly, but a message. They know she's testified. They're scrambling. Anya said, "They know it's falling apart." Leonard lowered his voice. "Anya, I've seen men with money do unspeakable things to protect a secret. Be careful." "I'm not going back underground," she replied. "Not now." By noon, news outlets were reporting on Croft's disappearance. Financial records were leaked suggesting accounts in Panama, Geneva, and Singapore, all connected to shell companies Horizon had denied knowledge of. The story had gone from courtroom drama to potential corporate collapse. Anya sat with Ben watching the coverage. "This isn't about me anymore," she whispered. "It's about all the people they've done this to who never had the chance to fight back." Ben nodded. "You're becoming the face of something bigger." She turned to him. "Then I need to act like it." That afternoon, Anya met with Leonard at a private law office he'd rented for emergency meetings. Inside were stacks of files, a hired security detail, and a woman named Marcia Chavez, an independent legal advisor brought in to help draft a countersuit. "I've reviewed the documentation," Marcia said after an hour of quiet study. "You have a case not just for dismissal, but for damages, emotional distress, corporate sabotage, possibly even witness endangerment." Anya watched Leonard carefully. "You ready for that?" "I've lost more than reputation," Leonard said. "They tried to strip me of everything, my name, my legacy." And they would have, if someone hadn't been stubborn enough to read every line. They thought no one would check. Marcia looked up. "You know they'll try to settle once it's clear you won't back down." Anya's voice was steady. "Then we don't settle. We make sure every piece of this is public. We drag it all into the light." Leonard leaned back. "This is war now." "No," Anya corrected. "This is justice. War is what they did when they thought no one was watching." That night, as she returned to the Hoboken apartment, her phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. She answered with a steady voice. "Hello? Thought you were clever, huh?" The voice was gravelly, older, thick with disdain. "You think you've won something." "Not yet," Anya replied calmly. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Men who hide behind power and fear. But I'm not afraid of either." The line went dead. She stared at the screen for a long time, then opened her laptop and began working. She drafted a full statement of facts linking each document timeline and piece of evidence into a single coherent narrative. She emailed copies to 3 different lawyers, 2 trusted journalists, and stored one more on an encrypted drive. If anything happened to her, the truth wouldn't die with her. The following morning, Iris, the whistleblower, called in tears. "They tried to get to my father," she said. "He owns a laundry shop in Queens. Someone came in last night, broke the front window, didn't steal anything, just left a note, 'Stay quiet.'" Anya's stomach twisted. Is he okay? He's shaken. I am too, but I'm not backing down. Anya closed her eyes. We're almost there. Just hold on. By Friday, the judge ordered a full evidentiary hearing. Croft was still missing, and Horizon's board released a half-hearted statement denying involvement, but their stock had dropped 18% in 2 days. Shareholders were panicking. Investigations were being launched by the SEC. Leonard stood beside Anya outside the courthouse steps, this time not as a man seeking redemption, but as an ally in the fight. Reporters asked questions, cameras flashed, but it was Anya who stepped up to the microphone. This isn't just a victory for me or for Mr. Vance. This is a moment for everyone who's ever been silenced by a system designed to protect the powerful. We've shown that with truth persistence and the courage to keep standing. Even the strongest walls can crack. The crowd applauded, and somewhere in the back, Iris stood silently, tears on her cheeks. Anya caught her eye and nodded. They were no longer fighting in the shadows. They were building something brighter, something lasting, and the storm that had once threatened to destroy them was finally breaking apart, one lie at a time. The morning of the evidentiary hearing arrived with an eerie calm. A pale light seeped through the clouds as Anya walked up the courthouse steps, flanked not by security guards or lawyers, but by the weight of a nation watching. Her name had become more than a headline. It was a symbol now whispered in cafes, written in blogs, quoted in college classrooms. She passed through the metal detectors, her binder clutched to her chest. Inside were the last pieces emails confirming internal discussions between Horizon board members, depositions from other staffers, and most importantly, a sworn statement from Iris's father, now backed by community support after the attack on his store. Leonard met her just outside the courtroom door. He looked tired but resolved. His suit was crisp, but his eyes held something gentler than before. Gratitude, maybe. Respect. You ready? He asked. Anya gave a half smile. I was born ready. They just didn't know it. The judge entered the courtroom moments later, his presence commanding the hush that followed. The room was packed, press spectators, junior lawyers clutching notepads, and a handful of Horizon board members who had chosen to show up not to defend the company, but likely to protect their individual reputations. Today's hearing, the judge began, will determine whether the court recognizes the claims of fraud and misconduct presented by the defense and whether we proceed to trial or refer these findings to a higher authority for criminal investigation. Anya stood. Your Honor, I'd like to begin by submitting Exhibit D, an email from Mr. Croft dated 2 months prior to the lawsuit filing, in which he outlines a path of pressure through legal maneuvering intended to destabilize Mr. Vance's holdings and force a renegotiation of key assets. The judge raised an eyebrow. And the authenticity. Confirmed by 3 forensic analysts, metadata aligns with known device logs and the sending IP traces back to a Horizon Labs secure VPN. Evelyn Reed was gone. In her place was a stiff-looking man from a white shoe firm trying hard to remain stone-faced. He stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff does not deny the existence of the email, but claims it was taken out of context. Anya didn't wait. Then let's put it in context. She pulled up a projection of the full thread. The chain includes responses from other board members agreeing to the plan, including comments like, Vance won't see it coming, and make sure Marcus handles the signature trail. Gasps echoed through the gallery. The judge glanced at the screen, then at the new plaintiff's counsel. Do you have a response? The lawyer cleared his throat. Not at this time. The judge looked toward Leonard. Mr. Vance, do you wish to make a statement? Leonard stood slowly. I built my company with people I trusted. Some of them betrayed that trust. But what matters today is not just clearing my name. It's recognizing what was done to silence voices like Miss Diaz's. She wasn't supposed to be heard, but she is loudly, clearly, and truthfully. He turned to Anya. And I thank her not as a businessman, but as a man who nearly forgot that truth matters more than pride. Anya's throat tightened, but she remained focused. Iris, she said gently, would you like to speak? The young woman stood shaking slightly, but with a fire in her eyes. I joined Horizon because I believed in opportunity. I stayed silent because I was afraid, but Anya gave me courage. And today, I want the court to know that Silas Croft instructed several of us to alter timestamps and destroy digital records. I did it. I'm ashamed, but I will no longer be part of hiding the truth. The judge nodded solemnly. The next hour passed in a flurry of document presentations, cross-referencing financial records showing video footage of Croft entering a private banking office in Geneva, footage obtained with the help of an investigative team Leonard had hired after Anya's recommendation. Then came the judge's voice, clear and final. Given the weight of the evidence, the credibility of the witnesses, and the failure of the plaintiff to contest these findings meaningfully, I am dismissing the case in full. Furthermore, I am referring these materials to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential prosecution under federal fraud statutes. This court is adjourned. There was no explosion of cheers, no applause, just silence, heavy, reverent, like the moment after a storm breaks and the world holds its breath. Outside, reporters surged. Anya stood on the steps once more, now not as a question mark, but as the answer. When asked for comment, she simply said, "Truth is slow, but it never stops walking." Leonard stood beside her, silent for a moment, then added, "This woman didn't just defend me. She defended every working person who ever got stepped on and told to be grateful for it." Later that night, back at the Hoboken apartment, Anya sat alone with her binder on her lap. The case was over, but the fight wasn't. There were more battles to be fought, laws to challenge, systems to question. Her phone buzzed again. It was Iris. "You okay?" Anya asked. "I am now. And my dad wants to meet you. He says you remind him of someone he used to believe in." Anya smiled. "I'd like that." She hung up and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the city glowed soft and endless. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, to feel the stillness, not as warning, but as peace. The system had tried to silence her, but Anya had spoken and the world had listened. The days following the courtroom victory were a blur of headlines, interviews, and cautious celebration. Anya's phone never stopped buzzing. She declined most television appearances, choosing instead to speak directly through a single op-ed in the New York Times, where she outlined her experience and warned of the silent ways power masks itself in legality. But beneath the public attention, she felt the quiet bruising of everything she'd carried. Victory was not healing. Justice hard-won still came with scars. Leonard invited her to dinner at a small restaurant near Tribeca, far from his usual haunts. No ties, no headlines, just two people who had survived something enormous together. "I keep expecting it to fall apart," he said as they sat over 2 bowls of clam chowder, "like someone's going to knock on the door and tell me it was all a dream." "It wasn't," Anya replied, "but dreams don't leave bruises like this." He chuckled softly. "How are you holding up?" She stirred her spoon in slow circles. "Tired, a little paranoid, but clearer than I've ever been. And you." He leaned back, relieved, but aware. "I know now how close I came to becoming the villain in someone else's story. If you hadn't shown up, I would have signed away everything I believed in." She looked at him carefully. "You were never the villain, but you were blind, and the system counted on that." He nodded. "I'll never stop paying attention again." They clinked glasses, wine for him, water for her. Not a toast to victory, but to vigilance. The next morning, Anya visited Iris's father's laundry shop. The glass had been replaced, and a small "Thank you, Anya" sign sat taped to the inside of the door. Inside, the man himself stood behind the counter, folding a pressed shirt. "You must be Anya," he said with a thick Brooklyn accent. "Iris told me you're tougher than concrete and kinder than warm bread." She smiled. "That's high praise." He motioned to a stool behind the counter. "Come sit. Let me tell you something." Anya did. He folded quietly, then spoke. "When Iris was a kid, she used to sneak into the back with her comic books and say she was training to be a hero. I'd laugh, because I thought the world didn't let girls like her or you get capes. But then you walked into that courtroom and you made the whole world listen. So, thank you." Anya swallowed hard. "I didn't do it alone." "No one ever does," he said, smiling. "But someone's got to start it." They shared coffee. And for a while, it felt like family. Later that week, Anya stood before a crowd at a community law forum in Harlem. She wasn't wearing a suit, just a sweater and jeans. Her voice the same quiet power that had carried through every courtroom. "Justice," she said, "doesn't happen in marble halls. It starts in mailrooms and kitchens and janitor closets. It starts with someone saying, 'No, this isn't right,' even if no one else is listening. And sometimes it ends with people in power losing their comfort so that truth can breathe." The crowd stood and clapped not out of obligation, but because they saw themselves in her struggle, in her courage. After the event, a young black woman approached her, maybe 19 years old, holding a battered copy of Constitutional Law for Dummies. "Miss Diaz, I want to do what you did. I want to fight for people who don't even know they need help yet." Anya took the book, thumbed through its wrinkled pages, and handed it back. "Then start by learning their names, their pain, their stories. Law is just a tool. The real work is in listening." The girl nodded. "Thank you." As Anya walked back to her car, she passed by a mural on a nearby wall, freshly painted, vibrant in the late afternoon sun. It was her apron, and all standing with her arms folded. Behind her, the words, "She didn't ask for permission." She stared at it for a long time. Then she laughed a short, surprised breath of joy. She took a photo, not for social media, but for her self-proof that something had changed. Back in her apartment that night, Anya sat at her kitchen table. The binder, the one she had carried through it all, was now closed, but she didn't put it away. Not yet. She opened her laptop and began to draft a new document, the People's Justice Network. Her goal wasn't to become a partner in a firm. It was to create something accessible, a foundation where ordinary workers, underpaid employees, and whistleblowers could seek legal guidance without fear of price tags or retaliation. Because justice, she knew, should never depend on the size of your wallet or the shine of your shoes. As she typed, she felt something she hadn't felt in months' peace. The wound had not healed. The fight was not over. But Anya Diaz, the young woman who once scrubbed floors in silence, was now building a stage for voices just like hers. And this time, the world was ready to listen. 1 year later, the courtroom was different this time. Smaller, less formal, tucked away in the heart of Brooklyn's old legal district. No cameras, no media storm, just rows of working-class citizens seated in folding chairs, quiet and attentive. Anya stood at the front, not in the defendant's box, not on the witness stand, but behind a lectern bearing a modest plaque. The People's Justice Network, free legal guidance for every worker. She looked out over the crowd, mechanics, bus drivers home, health aides, janitors, baristas, people like her. People who knew the taste of struggle and the weight of silence. This was her audience now, her mission. "Most of you know my story," she began, her voice even warm. "And if you don't, you've probably heard someone else tell it louder than I ever intended it to be told." A few chuckles broke the stillness. "I never planned to be a lawyer. I planned to work to survive, to keep my head down and do the best I could with what I had. But something happened. I saw something wrong, and I spoke. And then everything changed." She paused. "But here's the thing nobody tells you. Speaking up is only the first step. Justice is not a one-time act. It's a daily choice. A fight that doesn't end in the courtroom. It begins there. And it continues here in rooms like this, with people like us." At the back, Leonard Vance stood quietly, hands clasped, smiling faintly. His company had recovered, smaller, but more ethical now. He had appointed Anya as an external ethics consultant, but she hadn't taken a salary. She asked that the budget go toward funding this very room. "I started the People's Justice Network," Anya continued, "because too many people were being asked to understand the law with no help, no translation, no defense. We were told to trust a system that was never built with us in mind." She glanced at the wall where a mural had been painted, hands reaching upward, not for power, but for justice. It mirrored the one in Harlem, but this one was filled with real names of those the project had helped. In its first year, people wrongly fired, whistleblowers, protected tenants, defended. And now, Anya said, "We've trained 28 volunteers to offer free guidance. We've translated court forms into Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic. We've opened 4 satellite offices, and we're just getting started." Applause filled the room, not explosive, but steady, respectful, real. After the gathering, Anya stepped outside into the autumn air. The sky was gray but not heavy. She took a deep breath. Iris joined her, bundled in a trench coat, her cheeks red from the wind. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Iris asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Feels like longer," Anya replied, "but also like yesterday." "I still get scared," Iris admitted, "that someone's watching, that we'll wake up, and it'll all disappear." Anya put a hand on her shoulder. "The fear doesn't go away, but it gets smaller when you're not alone." They walked together toward the subway, ordinary again, safe in the crowd. Later that night, Anya sat at her kitchen table, same spot, same chair. The binder was still there, now filled with notes and printed messages from people she'd helped. A new folder sat beside it marked Legislation Draft Whistleblower Protection Act Amendments. She wasn't finished. As she typed, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her chest tightened for a moment. Then she answered, Anya Diaz. A pause. Then a woman's voice, soft, hesitant. Hi, you don't know me. My name is Cassandra. I clean offices in Midtown. Last week I found something I wasn't supposed to see. They told me to forget it, but I can't. I don't know what to do. Anya smiled gently. You did the right thing by calling. You're not alone. Silence on the line, then a sob. Then thank you. Anya looked out the window at the city she had once believed would never listen to her, and now it was calling. She leaned back in her chair and whispered, Let's begin again. Because justice wasn't just a battle, it was a legacy, and hers had only just begun. The story of Anya Diaz is more than just a legal victory. It's a quiet, powerful reminder that even the smallest voices can echo through the grandest halls. It tells us that resilience isn't loud. Sometimes it's the girl in the apron who changes the world, not by shouting, but by refusing to stay silent. Anya's journey shows us that strength doesn't always wear a suit or speak with authority. It grows in quiet kitchens, in late-night reading sessions, in moments when we choose truth, even when it terrifies us. The greatest kind of justice is the one born from compassion, conviction, and the courage to rise, even when no one asks you to. And you, if you were in Anya's place, would you have spoken up? Have you ever faced something unjust but didn't know how to respond? What would you say now if someone else needed your voice? If this story touched you in some way, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your feelings in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And if you believe in stories that uplift, that remind us of the quiet strength we all carry, we invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe to our channel so we can keep telling the stories that deserve to be heard. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And above all, thank you for believing in what's possible, even when the world says otherwise.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.